Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a cloud architect, a DBA, or an IT ops professional wrestling with multiple region deployments, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're diving into a massive paradigm shift in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI, and we're specifically focusing on how we consolidate logs across multiple regions. So for years now, cross-region log transport has just been one of those necessary evils, right? It's this complex web of infrastructure we've all just kind of accepted as the cost of doing business. But recently, a new method using the Logging Analytics REST API has completely flipped this on its head. But first, let me ask you a quick question that probably hits a bit too close to home if you deal with multi-region compliance and security monitoring. How many services does it actually take to move a simple log file across OCI regions? Seriously, think about your current architecture for a second. Think about all those hops.
Well, if your answer was traditionally way too many, you hit the nail right on the head. And it's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're essentially just trying to move text files, audit logs, VCN flow logs, just moving them from one region to a central hub. Yet, historically, we've had to provision, monitor, and honestly pay for an entire fleet of intermediate services just to do that. It's a massive pain point.
Okay, so here is our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll cover the multi-region logging challenge. Then, escaping the complex pipeline. Next, the direct ingestion paradigm, followed by an architectural breakdown and flow. And finally, practical steps for implementation.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the multi-region logging challenge. Why consolidate logs?
Before we get into fixing the plumbing, we really need to establish why we're moving all this data around in the first place. If your organization operates across multiple OCI regions, a centralized logging solution isn't just a nice-to-have. It is absolutely mandatory for three crucial business functions. First up, unified monitoring. You need that single pane of glass to see your system health globally. Second, security analysis. Look, threat actors don't care about regional boundaries, so your threat hunting can't be restricted by them either. And third, compliance reporting. Auditors are going to want to see a consolidated, immutable record of who did what and where. And you just can't perform those functions effectively if your logs are siloed all over the globe.
Moving on to Section 2, escaping the complex pipeline, the old way.
Let's examine that clunky, traditional architecture giving us all headaches. Honestly, it's essentially a Rube Goldberg machine. First, you need a service connector hub in every single source region. Then, that hub sends logs to OCI streaming, acting as a message bus. Next, you need OCI functions triggered by those streams just to read the logs. And finally, you've got complex cross-region networking pushing those logs to your home region's logging analytics instance. It is literally like booking a connecting flight with 3 miserable layovers. Every single hop introduces latency, adds configuration overhead, and creates another potential point of failure.
Which brings us to Section 3, the direct ingestion paradigm. A new paradigm. This is where things get really good. There is now a vastly superior, modern way to handle this workflow that cuts out the middleman entirely. Let's dramatically contrast these two. You've got the traditional pipeline with its multiple hops, heavy infrastructure, and high latency. And then you compare that to direct ingestion, where you're using a REST API over a direct, secure connection with zero intermediate services. If the old way was that awful connecting flight, direct ingestion is basically taking a private jet straight to your destination. It completely changes the game.
And the absolute hero of this new paradigm is the OCI Management Agent. This is a secure entity deployed right in your source regions. But the coolest part, and this is absolutely crucial, is how it authenticates. It interacts directly with REST APIs using zero-credential resource principal authentication. For the SecOps folks watching, you know exactly what that means. No stored passwords, no rotated API keys, and zero-credential files to manage or accidentally leak. The agent just intrinsically has the permissions it needs based on its identity in OCI.
Section 4, Architectural Breakdown and Flow. How it flows.
Let's pop the hood and see how this private jet actually operates chronologically. Step 1, the management agent running in the source region receives its configuration, which is pushed down from the central logging analytics instance in your home region. Step 2, it uses that resource principal to authenticate locally. Step 3, it reaches right out to the local source region's OCI logging API and pulls the required logs, like say the last hour of audit logs. Step 4, the agent securely transmits those collected logs directly back to your home region. No streaming, no functions, just a direct, secure pull and push.
So what does this all mean for you operationally?
Well, because you completely eliminate OCI streaming and functions, you drastically reduce your cloud bill. Hello, cost efficiency. Also, by removing those middlemen hops, the latency between an event happening remotely and it showing up in your central dashboard drops like a rock. Plus, it's highly versatile. We're not just talking about audit logs here. This works for various log types available via OCI logging APIs.
Finally, Section 5, Practical Steps for Implementation. Getting started.
All right, theory time is over. Let's give you the practical steps to actually set this up today. Implementing this blueprint happens in 3 phases. First, install the management agent on VMs in your source regions. You can do this standalone or via Oracle Cloud Agent. Second, craft your IAM framework. You'll create dynamic groups for those agents and write policies granting them least privilege access to read local logs via resource principal. Third, over in your home region's logging analytics, configure a REST API log source endpoint. The key trick here? Make sure that endpoint URL points directly to the OCI logging service API of the source region.
This essentially boils down to one simple idea. Build a robust, efficient, and secure centralized logging solution in OCI logging analytics without the overhead of intermediate data pipelines. It's cleaner, it's cheaper, and for sure, it is so much easier to maintain.
Which leaves us with one final thought. Are you ready to finally retire your cross-region log transport pipelines? If you're managing a messy, multi-hop architecture right now, you absolutely need to look into the OCI Management Agent REST API ingestion method. It is time to simplify your infrastructure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep optimizing.